Welcome to Fractured Chaos.
You ever sit at a table full of people who swear they love you, while their eyes dissect you like a specimen under glass? That was me, last Saturday, at my own family reunion, where my Aunt Linda, with her wine-stained teeth and venomous whispers, leaned over and said, loud enough for the entire patio to hear, "Well, technically, Joshua's not real family. He was adopted." The word hung in the air like an executioner's axe, and everyone laughed. Not the gentle kind of laughter that comes from love. The uncomfortable kind that ripples through a room when someone says what everyone's been thinking but had the decency not to say out loud. That's when something inside me, something that had been dormant for 32 years, finally snapped. All right, y'all want to play blood games? Let's play. Because I know things. Things that would make the pearls around Aunt Linda's neck tighten like a garrote. And this year, I brought receipts. But first, let me rewind. Because this story, it doesn't start with me being adopted. It starts with a DNA test and a dead man who might not be so dead after all. 6 months ago, I did one of those at-home ancestry kits. Not because I gave a damn about being 17% Scottish or whatever, but because something felt off about my family lately. Too many side glances during holiday dinners, too many hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, too many accidental slips about who looks like who. My adoptive dad, Bill, the only dad I'd ever known, had been acting strange, distant, like he was carrying something heavy on his shoulders. My adoptive mom died when I was 17. Cancer, quick and cruel. I never knew my birth parents, never cared really. Bill was enough. He taught me to fish, to change oil, to be a man. Blood didn't matter. At least, that's what I thought. Until I noticed him staring at old family photos with this look, like he was seeing ghosts. So I spit in the tube, sent it off, didn't think about it again. Until 3 weeks later, I got a match. Not just any match, a close one. Potential sibling, 99.7% match. But here's the kicker. The name, James Dillard. Same last name as Uncle Gerald. Same exact name as Uncle Gerald's son. Except, James died in a boating accident in 2004. At least, that's what the obituary said. That's what the funeral I attended as a 12-year-old said. That's what the empty casket, closed due to extensive trauma, said. But the guy in the DNA match? He was alive and living 45 minutes from me. So either the dead kid came back to life, or someone in my real family had been lying through their very real teeth. I messaged him, just to see, and he replied instantly. Said he knew my name, knew I was adopted, knew exactly who I was. Said he'd been waiting for me to find him. We met up in a Target parking lot, because apparently life-altering trauma needs fluorescent lighting and a backdrop of shopping carts. And when I saw him, I nearly vomited right there on the asphalt. He looked exactly like my cousin Tyler. Same smirk, same weird birthmark under the left eye, same nose as Aunt Linda. But his eyes, God, his eyes looked like mine. The same eyes that had stared back at me from mirrors my entire life. Eyes I'd never seen on anyone else in the family. Until now. James, if that was his name, told me he faked his death. Or more accurately, his parents did, after he got arrested for something embarrassing to the family. Better to bury a name than explain it, he said, lighting a cigarette with hands that trembled slightly. And guess who helped them forge the papers? Uncle Gerald and Aunt Linda. The same Aunt Linda who'd spent my entire life reminding me, in 1,000 little ways, that I didn't belong. The same Aunt Linda who'd accidentally excluded me from the family photos at Christmas 3 years running. The same Aunt Linda who'd handed me a serving spoon instead of a plate at Thanksgiving and said, "Oh, I forgot you were eating with us." And suddenly, being the adopted one didn't feel like a disadvantage. It felt like freedom. Because I didn't come from them, but I could destroy them. The reunion was coming up. A big, braggy backyard affair with matching shirts and everything. The annual Dillard Family Showcase where everyone pretended their lives were perfect. So I made a plan. I was going to give them a gift. A little family slideshow featuring some updated family history. And one surprise guest, James, agreed to show up. But under one condition, I don't reveal him too early. He wanted to watch first. See how everyone treated me when they thought I was the outsider. I want to see their faces when the real skeletons come out, he said, that smirk stretching across his face. I want to see Aunt Linda choke on her lies. And I thought, bet, let's make it a funeral for the family they thought they had. Before the reunion, I did some digging. Deep digging. The kind that involves courthouse records and microfiche and bribing an elderly clerk with artisanal donuts. I found things. Things that made my stomach turn. Things that made James's embarrassing crime look like a parking ticket. Before the reunion, I mailed out custom envelopes with a family tree chart. Except I edited it. Removed myself. Removed James. Added someone unexpected. Someone named Deborah A. Nobody asked, but they all stared and whispered. I could see Uncle Gerald's hands shaking as he poured himself a third scotch before noon. I could see Aunt Linda's eyes darting around the room, counting heads, checking exits. And that's when things got weird. So picture this. Barbecue smoke in the air, matching shirts that say, "Dillard blood runs deep." And me, standing in front of a projector with a microphone and zero chill. I start the slideshow. Photos, old clips, nostalgic music. Everyone's fake smiling. Then slide 37 hits. A family tree, with a new branch highlighted. "Let's talk about James," I said. The silence was instant, primal, the kind of silence that follows a gunshot. Aunt Linda turned pale. Uncle Gerald dropped his beer. Cousin Tyler, who'd always treated me like something stuck to his shoe, looked like he might pass out. Then, like a movie, James walked out, alive, whole, smirking, and wearing the same shirt as everyone else. "Guess I am family after all," he said. And Aunt Linda? She screamed, like she saw a ghost. Because she had. That's when James pulled out his birth certificate. Signed, sealed, with the name Deborah A. Dillard listed as mother. Deborah A., the same name I'd added to the chart. The same woman everyone thought was just an old cousin who died in the 80s. Turns out, Deborah was Aunt Linda's twin sister, locked away for years in a psychiatric facility. Not because she was mentally ill, but because she knew too much. After she gave birth, out of wedlock, to James. But wait, it gets better. Because while everyone's melting down, my adoptive dad Bill stands up, walks over to me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and says 6 words that make the entire backyard go dead silent. I've been waiting for this day. That's when I knew. He'd known all along. He'd been protecting me. From them. From the truth. Because while everyone's having their collective meltdown, I take the mic again. And I say, "Funny how blood works, huh? Y'all said I wasn't real family. But if you trace James's DNA," and I pull out my phone. "Turns out, he's not the only one tied to Deborah." I tap the screen. Another DNA match. Me. To her. Because apparently, Deborah A. had twins. And while James was sent to live with Aunt Linda for containment, I was adopted out, quietly, hidden, raised away from the mess, told I didn't belong. When really, I was blood. More blood than most of them. And here's the real kicker. Aunt Linda knew. She'd been paying hush money to the adoption agency for years. She thought if I stayed ignorant, I'd stay silent. But I guess the blood she was so proud of turned out to be the same blood that brought her downfall. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because there's one more thing I found during my digging. One more skeleton that was begging to dance. "So now you all know that James and I are twins," I said, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "Born to Deborah A. Dillard. But what you don't know is why Deborah was locked away." The projector clicked to a new slide. A police report, dated 1992. "It wasn't because she was mentally ill," I continued. "It was because she witnessed something. Something at the old family lake house. Something involving Uncle Gerald, Aunt Linda, and a man named Robert Chambers." Uncle Gerald lunged for the projector. Too late. The next slide showed newspaper clippings. Local businessman reported missing. A search continues for Chambers. Case gone cold. Chambers' family offers reward. "Robert Chambers was never found," I said, my voice echoing across the now silent yard. "But his blood was. In the boathouse. On a fishing knife that belonged to who, Uncle Gerald?" Gerald's face contorted. Not with anger, with fear. The kind that comes when decades of carefully constructed lies start crumbling. "Deborah saw it happen," I continued. "She was going to go to the police, but then she found out she was pregnant, with twins, and suddenly she had leverage. She had something to bargain with." I clicked to the next slide, a bank statement, showing regular payments from Gerald's account to a numbered account. For years. Until they suddenly stopped in 2004, the same year James died. "She was blackmailing you," I said, looking directly at Uncle Gerald, "until you decided it was cheaper to have her committed, to split up her children, to bury the truth along with her." The next slide showed a death certificate. Deborah A. Dillard. Cause of death, suicide. Date, 3 days after James's boating accident. "Except it wasn't suicide, was it?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "Because the orderly who found her body? He came forward last month, told a very interesting story about late-night visitors, a woman who looked just like Deborah, a woman named Linda, and a man carrying a medical bag. The crowd gasped. Aunt Linda stood frozen, her face a mask of rage and terror. "You killed your own sister," I said. "Made it look like an overdose. Crushed medication into powder, mixed it in water, forced it down her throat while Uncle Gerald held her down. Left bruises on her arms that the coroner conveniently overlooked after receiving an envelope full of cash." I clicked to another slide. Crime scene photos. Deborah's room. The position of her body. Unnatural. Arranged. "You even brought her favorite scarf, the one with the butterflies, to make it look sentimental. Placed a forged suicide note in handwriting that didn't quite match hers. A detail that would have been caught if anyone had bothered to investigate the death of a mentally ill woman with a history of episodes." Uncle Gerald was shaking now. "And the orderly remembers something else," I continued, my eyes locked on Aunt Linda's. "How you whispered in your sister's ear as she was dying. How you told her that her children would never know each other, never know the truth, that her secret would die with her." And that's when James pulled out the final piece of evidence, a flash drive. "Deborah wasn't as crazy as they made her out to be," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "She knew they'd come for her eventually, so she recorded everything, every conversation, every threat, every confession." The sound of police sirens filled the air. Not part of my plan, but apparently part of Bill's. My adoptive father, the man who'd raised me, protected me, loved me despite knowing exactly where I came from, had called them, had been working with them for months, had been waiting for this moment, for justice. So yeah, I was the adopted one, the outsider, the non-blood relative, until the truth crawled out of the family grave they buried it in. Now I'm the rightful heir to Deborah A. Dillard, which means I own part of the land this whole family reunion was thrown on. Ironic, right? They told me I wasn't family. Now they're trespassing on my property. And Aunt Linda? She hasn't said a word to me since. Hard to talk when you're being processed for first-degree murder. Uncle Gerald took a plea deal, rolled over on Linda faster than a dog playing dead. Turns out blood isn't thicker than prison time. Cousin Tyler writes me letters sometimes, begging forgiveness, saying he didn't know. Maybe he didn't. Maybe none of them did. Except the ones who did. The ones who buried my mother. The ones who separated me from my twin. The ones who built a family on bones and called it legacy. James and I meet for coffee every week now, trying to make up for lost time, trying to understand who we are, without the lies, without the masks, without the weight of secrets pressing down on our chests. Bill still comes over for Sunday dinners, says he's prouder of me than ever, says my mother, my real mother, would be proud too. I like to think she would be. I like to think she's watching. From wherever people go when they've been silenced, I like to think she's finally at peace. Because the truth? It has a way of working itself free, of clawing its way to the surface. No matter how deep you bury it, no matter how many layers of family photos and birthday cards and fake smiles you pile on top. So the next time someone tells you that you're not real family, ask them how many bodies they had to bury to feel legitimate. Chances are, they're just mad the skeleton started talking. And honey, I'm just getting started. Because it turns out Aunt Linda had secrets of her own. Secrets that make murder look like child's play. But that's a story for another family reunion. If there ever is one again.